Hi, it's Paul again with Orlando Bonsai, and I'm here today. We're going to work on my buttonwood that I've had for probably about 10 years. Really large buttonwood. Conocarpus erectus is the scientific name, of course, for it, or the Latin name for it. And it's great material to work with. It's a wonderful thing that we have in Florida. This, of course, is Yamadori. It's been collected from the, well, somewhere in Florida. As you know, probably with anybody that's ever done anything with buttonwood, there's a person, Mary Madison, and most likely if you're looking at a buttonwood and it's a bonsai, most likely it had something to do with Mary Madison at some point. She did a great job collecting this material. When I first got it, it had a very large gin that went a lot further out, which I carved back to bring it back into the composition of the whole tree. But and even though I've had this tree for so long, and I've got very good ramification, it's still a lot of room for improvement. And again, as time goes on, you got to maintain the look of the tree. The issues that I had originally with this tree was it does a slight curve and it curves back, and it looked very weak because there was nothing supporting it. So what I did was I built this rock structure underneath and made a root over rock. And in time, actually, I've got some roots that are actually coming down over the rock to actually make it part of the composition. Okay, and here's those roots that are starting to develop. I usually have moss growing up along the bottom of it, which keeps it nice and moist, but underneath that I had a few new shoots grow, and I've got even a few more that are starting down here, dropping new roots that are going to start to really encompass this rock. Here's one right here, and here's another one starting in here as well, which will in time thicken up and really make this a really very strong base to this, and really become, put the rock as part of the composition. Now, some of the issues that I have, though, since this rock is so heavy, it's starting to actually sit incorrectly in the pot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of tilt the tree to this level, and by what I'm going to do is I'll actually lift the rock out of the pot, put a little bit of soil underneath, just to give it a little tilt to get it facing or at the angle that I want. It just feels like it's leaning over a little bit right now, and I just want to get that, give it a more stable look. Also, I'm going to defoliate this tree today. Even though it's putting out a lot of new growth, I want to get in there and redefine some structuring. I want to build some secondary branches. Right now I just have a lot of well, I have some secondary, but I'm looking to get more ramification, more tertiary branches, so that this thing really develops into something that's very, very defined pads and very defined branching. So right now it's just kind of like an overall shape, but I think I can get this tree even to the next level. And also, one of the highlights of this tree for me, and it took a little while for me to see this, but I think where I have the camera right now you can see it. There's an animal which is called a snake bird, and it's a bird that actually kind of swims underwater, catches fish, but it's got a very peculiar angle to its neck and very defined and very thin looking head and very thin looking neck. And this gin right here, this driftwood, really represents to me the head of the bird right here and then the neck of the bird right here. I really feel like this little bit in the front makes me really think of a snake bird, and I can't ask for better placement for that. So what I do is I kind of really clean this up with some lime sulfur or some or I cleaned it up with some white vinegar just to really make it shine, and against the dark bark and the green foliage, it really shows. And I think just kind of keeping the foliage out and don't putting any breaks in it, it just makes it stand out all that much better. And it's just an added feature to this tree. Of course, I don't want to take away from the natural look of the bonsai, but I think by having something so unique and so elegant in the composition, I think really works very, very well. The whole reason I want to do this, though, I do want to get this tree cleaned up, but one of the biggest things that I do want to work on is the bark of this tree. At a convention a couple weeks ago here in Central Florida, there was a number of buttonwoods, and I did notice some that did have the bark cleaned up. And when you remove this very coarse bark, underneath is a reddish bark, right on top of the cambium. And with that red against the white of the driftwood and the dark green, it really makes for a beautiful composition. It's almost like a San Jose juniper or that type of juniper. Just for those that don't know this material very well, this is all deadwood in here. These things grow in the mangroves in Florida, which means that they're being hit by salt water. So these trees continually die and come back, and then small little veins continue to exist while the rest of the tree has died off. This tree could probably be nearly 100 years old, but it's hard to tell because of just the conditions that it grew in. So what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to make all the different components of this stand out. I've got a lot of algae that's grown on my coral that is the base for this, which I've used as the rock, which is very natural for the the composition of a buttonwood. I'm trying to keep this as realistic as I possibly can. So I want to make this stand up, and this white almost is as white as the driftwood. Again, reduce the foliage, reduce the size of the leaf, and give myself more defined pads in here. Even though I've got a number of pads existing right now, they kind of blend together as chunky masses, and I want them to be very separate. So I want to get in there, reduce the leaves, and then want to really make all the characteristics of a buttonwood really stand out and make this a wonderful showcase. Now the bonsai pot that I have this in, I love the color blue with a buttonwood anyway. The color works very, very well. And plus the blue almost makes me feel like water. And since buttonwoods grow and love water and are so close to the water, I think it's a perfect composition of having the water, the land that it's adhered to, and then the tree kind of growing out of the whole different challenge that it has to make its life existing in such harsh conditions as this, through the hurricanes and everything like that. So that's my project for today. I hope I explained it well enough of why I'm doing what I'm doing, and then hopefully as you just kind of watch over my shoulder as I continue to work on this, maybe you can see some techniques that might help you, and maybe we can get some good results at the end of this. So stay tuned, and I'll kind of just work and make some comments as I go along, but enjoy. Okay, first things first, we need to get the leaves off, because once I get the leaves off, then I have access to the bark. I have easier method to get in and take care of the lime sulfur and cleaning the driftwood. So there's a number of ways to do this. Buttonwoods have very rigid leaves, and will actually, if you fold them, will crack off. So it's an easy way to remove the leaves, and you don't want to mess up that secondary branch. You just want to kind of get in there and just take the leaves off as best you can. You can do this with clippers as well, just as simple. It's a little time consuming, but you know what, in the long run it's definitely worth taking the time to remove the leaves. If you leave a little piece, don't worry, because the tree knows it's got a damaged leaf and is going to drop it in time anyway. So if you don't get rid of everything, don't concern yourself too much with it. So I'm just going to continue to work through removing the leaves off this tree. Looking at it, this looks like this might take a little while, so I'll come back to this, or come back to the video in a short period as soon as I finish just removing leaves, because this is going to be like watching paint dry right now. So it's pretty amazing just how removing the leaves makes such a huge difference in this tree, but it's actually prettier looking already. It's a lot lighter, you see a lot more of the structure in there, and actually talking about the structure, you can see how many leaves or how many branches are growing straight up. That's why I'm not getting the definition in my branching. What I need to do is, these branches are growing straight up, I need to open up like this. That way, as they fill back in, I got clearly defined pads of no overlapping branches, and I got nice, concise areas of the tree. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to reduce the length of some of this, so that's why I didn't take off all the leaves, because I'm going to wind up going through with the shears right now to cut it back a little bit. But the first thing I got to do is get this thing situated in the pot so that I know the way that I'm going to develop the tree. If I go ahead and style it right now, then level it off, my branches are going to be all kind of not where I really want them. So what I need to do right now is kind of just lift this up a little bit. I've got a little bit of extra soil mix. So as I lift it up, I'm just going to underfill underneath the rocks just to support it, and then it should be sitting exactly where I want it. Just to give you an idea, I'm trying to get somewhere like about right there. I know it's just a very subtle thing, but it's just a subtle thing that's been driving me crazy for the longest time, because every time I look at the tree, I say it's just not sitting balanced. It looks like it's ready to fall over. So just that little slight difference is going to make all the world of difference to me. So okay, so what I determined was it's just going to be easier just to go ahead and pull the tree, or pull the entire root ball out of the pot. Gives me an opportunity to go in to see if we are root bound, take a look at the roots of the tree, and just do this without really damaging very much, and just getting taking our time to do this correctly. So I got in there, my screens are still in place, looking good, not a whole lot of dirt in here, so it's pretty easy. Now all I'm going to do is just take a little bit of soil on the low end, build this up a little bit, just to give it something to support this side with. I don't need a whole lot because I don't want to lift it up too much, but I do want to give it a bit of a lift. So I'm just going to give us a little bit of an angle on this side. So as I set the root ball back in, it's going to give me a nice little slope that I really want. It's going to change the look of this tree drastically, I think, but to some people it might not even be noticeable. So take a look at this root ball again. Just going to go in, set it back in nice and gently. Maybe break up the roots a little bit underneath and get that to sit right back in there. Now of course we're sitting a little higher than we were, so I just got to get this right back in, and all I'm going to do is just break up the soil along the outside to get everything to go right back in. And all this is going to take is just a little bit of working the roots along the edges just to get this set into the pot correctly. So before, my apex used to be sitting more this way. It was tilted back, made the whole tree feel like it was falling over, because this is the weight of my foliage on my tree, so this is where the weight seemed to be going. Now I've got the tree actually over this way, so it balances out. The heavier branches will maintain this heaviness, so instead of falling this way because of the heaviness of over here and falling that way because of the heaviness here, I now have a good balance right over the apex of the tree. Here's my apex, and of course it's right over the center of the base of the tree, so it feels much more stable to me and much more secure to the ground. I'm really loving how these roots have started to fill in down here, because that's going to make a huge difference. I am going to leave a little bit of sphagnum moss in here just to kind of keep this root moist, because that's growing in such a great position. I'm just going to tuck that in right now, and then moisture will keep close to that root, and as it continues to grow, I won't need that, and it'll finally get that bark on the outside, make it much more completed root for it. So next step, let's clean this bark up. So this is what the bark looks like right now. Very coarse, very thick. It's almost like a black pine or a some sort of pine bark. It's very thick, very crusty, almost kind of like even a juniper. But you can see how the new roots have a nice reddish color to them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slowly take a wire brush, and with the grain, don't go across, because this is your live vein that keeps the tree alive. If you start going across, you're going to start breaking the connection between the water flow for this tree, and then you've killed the tree. So just make sure that you stay with the flow of the tree. And all we're going to do is just kind of short little strokes, just slowly remove this until you get down to the nice reddish color. Not a strenuous job, but it's just a little bit time consuming. But take your time with this, because it's so important not to damage the tree when you're doing this. But the results and the benefits aesthetically of doing this are going to be drastic and totally worthwhile. On the thicker sections, you can remove some of those heavier pieces of bark, but take your time, because sometimes when you peel those off, you might be peeling a little bit too much cambium. So take your time and don't rush this process. So I'm just going to continue to work through. You can see how nice the color is underneath all of that dark black bark. But there's a lot of people that will keep this as the black bark. It certainly doesn't take away from the tree at all. It's more of a natural look. But I figured, since you do have the opportunity to bring out another color to contrast the tree, I say why not? Let's really make this tree as beautiful as we can. So I'm going to continue to work on this, and let's take a look at the results afterwards. Okay, I think you're going to agree there's quite a difference from what we started with. I also started working on the rock area a little bit, which I'll bring down a little bit. Let's take a look at that. I cleaned up the rock to start to show this exposed root that's coming down. I wanted to show the texture of the rock and also the color of the rock. Even though it's a little bit of green, I'm going to put a little bit of white vinegar on that. I'm going to protect the roots, of course, when I do this, but that's going to make that a nice bleached white look. But it'll still have a different texture from the driftwood, but will do a wonderful thing by giving white, and then this wonderful red vein that's going up through the main part of the tree. It's still going to be such a great focal point. This is where I want to get your eye to come first. Secondly, I want to work the way up and then eventually open up the entire top of the tree, where you start to see my, the bird that I talk about in this, of course, which is again right here. These are such powerful areas for me, because it's all framed in by the canopy of the tree. And then what do we have? Beautiful red bark of the tree, plus this little natural movement that looks just so much to like a snake bird for me. So I'm just really, really happy with the overall composition of this tree. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and apply some lime sulfur in here just to get this to brighten up a little bit, because it's probably been about 2 or 3 years since I applied it last. So why not, since defoliated it, let's go ahead and just paint the stuff on, get it covered, and let it soak in a little bit. And then I'm going to start coming in, reducing the branches down a little bit, and then wiring it out into complete pads. And then it's just a matter of that tree is growing out this year and really filling into something spectacular. But it's changed so much from what we started with just not even a half hour ago. Just these simple little changes. There's always room for improvement, no matter what stage your tree is in. The only finished bonsai is a dead bonsai. These things are always changing, and I think the trees always present you with new surprises and new challenges. But in the long run, it makes the tree that much better. So I'm going to start doing a little bit of lime sulfur. Again, I'm not going to cover that in this video, so I'm just going to go ahead and apply it and I'll come back to this video in just a few seconds. When we come back, this is going to have a nice hazy yellow to it because that's how lime sulfur dries. So I'm going to take care of that right now. Okay, so lots of good differences already. Amazing transformation we've made with just simply really cleaning it up, straightening it up in the pot. Haven't really done anything structurally besides change the angle of the tree, but other than that, it's just been cleaning the rock, moving away a lot of the moss, cleaning the bark, and then removing the foliage. So what I'm going to do now is work on the foliage, and this is probably the first structural difference I'm going to make to the tree. As you can see, I mentioned before, a lot of the branches are growing straight up. So if I just bring these down and get them in line with the rest of the pad, it's going to give me nice separate areas with a lot of see-through area, because your trees, you never want a full canopy that's just one big mass. You want to have negative space in there as well, which will allow you to see sunlight or behind the tree as well. You want to see depth. If you just have this as one big canopy, it just looks like just almost like a topiary, where you're just kind of keeping it trimmed to the head, to a head shape or something like that. We want to make this look like a tree, and as if you look at a tree, there's a lot of empty spaces in there where you can actually see through the branches, especially in older trees. Younger trees are a lot more dense, but the older trees, you get a lot less branching, but a lot more space and a lot more developed branches. So what I'm going to do right now is just kind of do a little bit of wiring. Doesn't need a whole lot by the looks of it, but just enough. And again, one more job that looks kind of like or is similar to watching paint dry. So if you get too bored, you can always fast forward. But I'm going to let this one run for a little bit as I kind of work through this. And I'm going to wind up probably removing a branch or two in the process. There's a few dead branches in here too that I just want to get cleaned up. Buttonwood is such a nice material to work with. It is a tropical, so you do have to protect it in the wintertime. I usually let it get down to somewhere in the range of 32 degrees or above before I protect. As soon as it starts to get down into the lower teens or into the lower 30s, I start bringing it in. And there's times when I'll actually bring it in when it just goes below 40, just to be on the safe side. I think the length of my branches is pretty good. I don't think I need to reduce this branch back. I think it's a good balance for the other, the first branch, second branch. I think these are a good balance of the two. I don't think it's extended too far, and I think it's a nice position for a pad as well. So there's my first branch, pretty easy. Clean up on this. And again, I'm just going to go in and remove some of the dead tips off of this, just to give it a good opportunity to really clean it up. I don't do this too often on this tree, so I really want to get in and take a good look at it. Maybe take the tips off these, remove that terminal bud. Don't want them to get any longer, just want them to get fuller. So that's what we're working on right now. This is my first branch on the right side. This one I actually have two pad areas, and I've got a little bit of crossing over, so let me just go ahead and clean some of this up a little bit. Gonna get a second branch in here, so I want to get rid of that one. I do this tree a lot of just clip and grow. It's an easy way to maintain the tree, but every so often you really do have to get in here and wire. Wiring, even though some people don't like it, some people do. It's a necessity to really get your trees refined. Without it, your trees will only get to a certain level of success. And you don't need to wire all the way out to the tip of the branches if you're just actually just pushing the position of a branch. So I'm just going to clean that up a little bit. With the tropical like this, the wire is probably only going to stay on probably maybe three months at the most. It'll actually start cutting in. I'm not that concerned about this kind of tree cutting in because the scars hide after a time. So even if you do get some wiring scars from leaving it on too long, you just have to wait it out and they'll go away. Now on this branch, this is the one where I'm dealing with my little snake bird. I don't want to take away from the look of it. And again, there's my, this side right here is where I'm referring to. This is the neck of the bird. I know it's kind of unusual to put some sort of artwork in the middle of a tree, but hey, if the tree's offering it, I'm going to amplify it and I'm going to show it off because it makes this tree very unique and very exciting. So if the tree's going to give it to me, I'm definitely going to take it. And I'm just anchoring this wire right back here because I really want to change the shape of this branch a little bit. So I'm just going to work this out to the tips a little bit. And when you're wiring, you're not using the branch as a fulcrum. You're twisting the wire around the branch. And we're just going to bring that a little bit. See, now that gives me some nice separation between these two branches, which I really want, because I want this pad to be independent from this pad. So I'm going to have nice foliage here, nice foliage there. I'm not sure if I need this branch. It's getting a little bit close. It's going directly to that one. I'm just going to remove that altogether. Make life a lot easier. And I'm just going to continue around the tree just like that. So hopefully that gives you a good idea of what I'm looking to do. And once I get the top of the tree completely wired out, I'll come back and just kind of give one more final review of what's going on and what the future of this tree is going to be. So there it is. What we did was just finish up the wiring a little bit. Not a whole lot of wiring. This is, this tree's been worked on for quite a few years, so not a super amount of wiring needed to be done, but just enough just to give me some good separation. I am going to need a branch in this area right here, so I'm going to develop something off the trunk this year just to give me a nice little pad right about in this area, just to fill it in a little bit of a blank spot. But for the most part, I think we've got the perfect structure going with this tree. I like the openness of it. I like the smaller leaves, so we're going to work on reducing the leaf size on that as well. And then of course the trunk of this tree and the area near the pot is just looking fantastic. I added a little bit of moss just to give it a little bit of contrast and to kind of show what the finished product's going to look like. Again, the driftwood's going to look a lot whiter soon as the lime sulfur finishes its process and it's watered a few times. And then again, the rocks I'm going to work on with just getting the white vinegar put on just to finish that up. But even with the look of it right now, I'm pretty happy. And I think the biggest enhancement was bringing out the red in the lifeline of the tree, which is the actual trunk, which just looks fantastic this way. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it was a learning process for a lot of you and at least enjoyable to watch. The things that I do on a weekly or daily basis, taking care of my own personal collection. If you have any questions, you can always reach me at orlandobonsai.com. And again, I'm Paul with Orlando Bonsai, and I'll be talking to you soon.